I was sitting alone at the counter of Miller's Diner when she appeared beside me. My son and daughter-in-law had stepped outside to take a phone call. Business. Always business with them. And I was nursing my third cup of coffee, staring at the pie I hadn't touched. 43 years of marriage. And now I couldn't even finish a slice of apple pie without thinking about how Eleanor used to steal the crust right off my plate. She'd been gone 11 months. The woman who sat down next to me was somewhere in her 50s. Gray coat, dark hair pinned back tight, eyes that moved around the room the way my sergeants used to during patrol. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Mr. Calloway. Not a question. A statement. That's me. She slid a plain white envelope across the counter, keeping her hand flat on top of it. Don't open this here. Don't open it until midnight. She finally looked at me then, just for a second. And don't tell your son. Before I could say a single word, she was gone. I watched her walk straight through the diner, through the front door, and disappear into the parking lot like smoke in wind. I looked around. Nobody had noticed. The waitress was refilling coffee at the far end. 2 teenagers were arguing over a phone in the corner booth. I tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket just as the door swung open. Dad, you ready? My son Daniel stood there, his wife Christine behind him, her smile the kind that never quite reached her eyes. Ready, I said. I'm glad you're here with me today. Before I tell you what was inside that envelope, go ahead and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I'd love to know who's listening to this old man's story. 11 months after burying my wife, I was still trying to figure out how to be a person again. Eleanor and I had built our life in Harlan County, Kentucky, 22 acres outside of town. A 2-story house we'd painted ourselves the summer before our youngest was born, a garden she'd kept going for 30 years. When the doctors told us it was her heart, they said she had maybe 6 months. She lasted 4. The morning after her funeral, my son Daniel sat across from me at that same kitchen table and said, Dad, we need to talk about the property. I should have heard it then, the sharpness underneath the concern, but I was 68 years old, and I had just put my wife in the ground, and I wasn't hearing much of anything clearly. Daniel was 41. He'd moved to Lexington 15 years ago with Christine, gotten into commercial real estate, done well for himself. He called on Sundays, visited at Christmas, sent flowers on Eleanor's birthday every year without fail. He was a good son. I believed that. I had believed it completely, the way you believe in something you built yourself. The property is a lot to manage alone, he said that morning. 22 acres, the house, the outbuildings. Mom handled so much of it. I know what she handled, I said. We just want you to be realistic. Christine hadn't said a word. She was looking at her phone under the table. Over the following months, the conversation kept coming back. Different angles, same destination. The property was too much. The winters were hard. What if I fell? What if something happened and nobody found me for days? They had a contact at a development company, Horizon Group, and the offer was substantial, $1.8 million. I could move into something manageable, something sensible. I kept saying I'd think about it. At Miller's Diner that afternoon, they'd tried again. Daniel had slid a folder across the table. Signed letter of intent, he said. All I had to do was agree to the appraisal. Just the appraisal, Dad. No commitment. I said I'd think about it. That was when they went outside to make their call, and the woman in the gray coat sat down next to me. The drive home was 20 minutes of back roads through bare November trees. The envelope sat in my jacket pocket like it weighed 10 pounds. I'd almost opened it twice at red lights. Both times I'd stopped myself. Something about the way that woman had looked at me. Steady, serious, carrying a weight she'd clearly been carrying for a while, made me want to do what she said. The house was dark when I pulled in. It was always dark now. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, put the envelope in front of me and watched it the way you watch something you're not sure is safe to touch. Outside, wind moved through the oak trees Eleanor had planted along the property line 20 years ago. The clock above the stove read 9:14. I had almost 3 hours. I thought about Daniel, about Christine's phone under the table, about the folder with the Horizon Group letterhead, about the way my son had said $1.8 million. with a familiarity that told me he'd said it several times before, just not to me. At 11:58, I picked up the envelope. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note on plain paper. The photograph stopped my heart. It was Eleanor, alive, standing outside what looked like a county courthouse, talking to a man I didn't recognize. The timestamp in the corner read 8 weeks before she died. She was carrying a leather folder pressed tight against her chest, the kind she used when she meant business. I knew that folder. I'd given it to her for our 35th anniversary. The note said 4 words, "He never sold it." I read it again and again. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, property deed. Check the original. Recorded 1987, Harlan County Clerk's Office. My hands would not stop shaking. I sat at that table until 3 a.m., with my laptop open and every document I could find pulled up in front of me. The original deed to the property, recorded when Eleanor and I bought the land in 1987, listed 2 names, mine and hers. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Standard for married couples. I knew this. I had signed those papers myself. But there was a second document, filed in 2019. A quiet title action, a legal process that can establish or change ownership of land, filed by a company called Crestwood Holdings, LLC. I had never heard of Crestwood Holdings, LLC. I searched the name until my eyes burned. Corporate registration records in Kentucky listed 1 member, Daniel Ray Calloway. My son had filed a legal claim on our property 4 years ago without telling me. I didn't sleep. I sat in Eleanor's chair by the window and watched the sun come up over the east field, and I tried to remember every conversation I'd had with my son in the past 4 years, and find the moment I should have seen this coming. By 8 a.m., gravel was crunching in the driveway. Daniel's truck, he climbed out alone, which surprised me. He was carrying a paper bag, bakery, from the smell of it, and wearing the easy smile he'd perfected somewhere around age 30. "Thought I'd check on you," he said at the door. "Early for that. Couldn't sleep." He set the bag on the counter. "Dad, I want to apologize for pushing so hard yesterday. Christine thinks I was too aggressive with the timeline." I poured coffee and didn't say anything. Old military habit. When you don't know what you're walking into, you let the other person keep talking. "The thing is," Daniel continued, sitting down at my kitchen table like he'd grown up at it, which he had, "the Horizon offer isn't going to stay on the table forever. These things have windows, and I want to make sure you're protected, financially, that this land is working for you instead of the other way around." "It's always worked for me," I said. He looked at his coffee cup. "Dad, you're 68. You're out here alone. What Mom would have wanted. Don't," I said. He stopped. "Don't tell me what your mother would have wanted." "Don't," I said. He stopped. "Don't tell me what your mother would have wanted. You didn't know her as well as you think you did." Something moved behind his eyes. Quick, carefully controlled. He recovered in under a second. "I'm just trying to help." "I know," I said. "I'll think about it." After he left, I sat in Eleanor's chair again, and I looked at the photograph of her outside the courthouse. She was 3 weeks from her diagnosis in that picture. She had known something was coming. Medically, she had to have felt it. And instead of resting, she had driven herself to a county courthouse in Harlan, carrying her leather folder. She had been trying to protect something. That afternoon, I drove to Harlan. The county clerk's office smelled like every government office I'd ever been in. Paper and carpet and recycled air. A woman named Darlene helped me pull the property records. She laid them out on the counter without a word, and I stood there in my coat and read through every page. The quiet title action filed by Crestwood Holdings in 2019 had been dismissed. Dismissed by order of a judge I didn't know, citing insufficient standing. Dismissed. But it had been filed. My son had tried to establish legal ownership of my property 4 years ago, and I had never known. "Is there anything else filed more recently?" I asked. Darlene checked her screen. "There's a lien inquiry from 6 months ago. Preliminary. Nothing recorded yet." 6 months ago. 2 months before Eleanor died. I drove home with both hands tight on the wheel and my mind running every calculation it could. Daniel had gambling debts. I'd known that vaguely, the way you know things about your children that they don't tell you directly, But that leaked through in small ways. A comment here, a missed Christmas, a year where the Sunday calls dropped off. I had never pushed. I had given him money twice and told myself it was help and not noticed when the amount kept going up. The driveway was empty when I got home. I went straight to Eleanor's desk. She'd kept it in the corner of the bedroom, small and dark-stained, covered in her handwriting and stacks of organized papers. I had not touched it since she died. I'd been telling myself I was respecting her space. The truth was, I couldn't stand to. I started at the bottom drawer. Under a folder of old utility bills, I found a leather journal, small black, the kind she carried in her purse when she wanted to remember something. The entries were dated. Most were ordinary, garden notes, church schedules, recipes she wanted to try, but in the last 6 pages, the handwriting changed. Tighter, smaller, more careful. More careful. D filed the quiet title. Found confirmation from courthouse record. He doesn't know I know. Spoke with Margaret today. She believes D is carrying significant debt, possibly connected to a private lender. Not a bank. Dangerous. Found documents in the truck. Copies. 2 buyers for the property already lined up through Horizon. Commission goes to D, not to sale. He arranged it. C knows. C Christine. If something happens to me, the evidence is where I planted the red bud. Tin box. Waterproof. Trust the woman in the gray coat. She'll find you first. My chest felt hollow. I closed the journal, sat on the edge of the bed for a long time in the quiet of the room that still smelled faintly like her. The woman in the gray coat had been Eleanor's. My wife had planned this, had known she was running out of time, and had set up a way to reach me after she was gone. Through a stranger in a diner in a plain white envelope with a photograph and 4 words. She had trusted me to figure out the rest. A knock at the front door. I put the journal in my coat pocket and went to answer it. The man on my porch was maybe 55. Plain clothes, quiet face. The particular stillness of someone who spent a lot of time watching other people. He held up a badge. Mr. Calloway, my name is Agent Richard Marsh. I'm with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Division, FBI Field Office out of Louisville. I believe your wife may have been in contact with our office before her passing. I stepped back and let him in. He sat at my kitchen table and spoke plainly, the way people speak when they have decided to stop being careful with you because there isn't time for it. Your wife reached out to us 14 months ago. She had discovered what appeared to be a predatory real estate fraud operation connected to a private lending group out of Nashville. Your son had borrowed from them. When he couldn't repay, they arranged an agreement. He would facilitate the transfer of high-value rural properties to Horizon Group, which is a shell company they control. Commission went to Daniel. Properties went to them at under-market rates. Landowners were pressured or deceived into selling. How many properties? My voice came out level. I was grateful for that. Yours would have been the 9th. Marsh folded his hands. Your wife documented the operation for almost a year. Loan records, property filings, communications between Daniel and the lending group's representative. She was meticulous. He paused. She was also aware that her health was declining and that she needed to get the evidence secured before she ran out of time. She buried it on the property and arranged for a colleague of ours who operates in the area, to reach you at the right moment. The woman in the gray coat, Agent Sandra Hollis, she's been watching for an opportunity to make contact safely for 3 months. I put my hands flat on the table. My son knows I went to the courthouse today. Darlene at the clerk's office knows my name. If someone is watching, we know. Marsh stood. Mr. Marshad, Calloway, I need to ask you to do something difficult. I need you to go about your evening as normally as you can. Don't confront Daniel. Don't change anything. We need 48 hours to position correctly and get a warrant that covers the full network, not just the local piece. If Daniel or the lending group suspects the evidence has been found, they'll move to protect themselves. And me? Marsh looked at me steadily. We'll have eyes on this property tonight. You won't be alone. He left before dark. I cooked dinner I didn't eat. Watched television I didn't see. went to bed at my normal time, and lay staring at the ceiling for 2 hours, listening to the house settle around me. Eleanor had spent 14 months building a case while her heart was failing. She had driven to courthouses and met with federal agents and buried evidence in the frozen ground and set up a chain of contacts to reach me after she was gone. All of it quiet. All of it alone. Because she knew that if she'd told me, I would have gone straight at Daniel like a freight train and burned everything she'd built. She had known me that well. She had protected me from myself. 48 hours felt like 48 years. On the second night, my phone buzzed. Daniel, coming by tomorrow morning. We should talk. Deadline on the offer is end of week. I typed back, come for breakfast. 8 o'clock. I set the phone down and looked out the kitchen window at the dark tree line. Somewhere out there, past the fence row and the winter bear garden, the redbud Eleanor had planted the year we celebrated our 20th anniversary stood in the dark. The tin box was still there. Aid and Marsh had confirmed it was intact. They had photographed everything and left it in place so the chain of evidence was unbroken. Eleanor had thought of that too. At 7:55 the following morning, Daniel's truck came up the driveway. Christine's car came in right behind it. They had not told me she was coming. I opened the door before they reached the porch. Morning, I said. Daniel looked tired. Christine looked the way she always looked. Composed, careful, unreadable. She was carrying a folder, and I recognized the Horizon Group logo on the tab. Dad. Daniel came inside. I know you've been processing. I know this is hard. But the deadline is real, and I need you to understand what you'd be walking away from if you... Sit down, I said. Both of you. They sat. I poured coffee and set it in front of them, and sat down across the table. I looked at my son. He looked back at me with the face I had known for 41 years, the one he'd had at 5 years old, helping me stack firewood, proud to be useful. I let myself feel that for one moment, and then I set it aside. I know about Crestwood Holdings, I said. Daniel went still. I know about the quiet title action you filed in 2019. I know about the lien inquiry from 6 months ago. I know about your arrangement with Horizon Group, and I know about the private lending group in Nashville. I kept my voice flat, and I know your mother knew. Christine's hand tightened on the folder. Dad. Daniel's voice had gone careful in a way that made him sound like a stranger. Where's this coming from? You've been under a lot of stress. Do not do that. He stopped. Do not look at me and tell me I'm confused. I spent 22 years in the army reading men who were trying to deceive me in the field. I know exactly what I'm seeing. I looked at Christine. The commission structure was your idea, wasn't it? The arrangement where Horizon pays Daniel directly off the sale, so there's no clean record connecting the property transfer to the loan repayment. Christine said nothing, but she put the folder flat on the table and took her hand off it, the way you let go of something that has just become evidence. We didn't, Daniel started. Your mother spent the last year of her life documenting every piece of what you built. She did it because she believed, even at the end, even knowing what you'd done, that the law could handle it better than I could. My throat tightened. I breathed through it. She was right. She was always smarter than both of us. Daniel stood up. I don't know what you think you have, but... The front door opened. Agent Marsh came in first. Agent Hollis, the woman from the diner, the woman in the gray coat, came in behind him. 2 more agents followed, and through the window I could see a third vehicle pulling up the drive. Daniel Calloway. Marsh moved to the table. Christine Calloway. I'm placing both of you under arrest in connection with a federal investigation into wire fraud, predatory real estate practices, and conspiracy. He recited the rest of it clearly and without drama, while Hollis moved to Christine's side. Daniel looked at me. I had not seen that look on his face since he was 12 years old, and I caught him in a lie and he realized it was over. Dad, I know, I said. I know you needed help. I know it got away from you. I would have given you anything you asked for. My voice held. I was proud of that, but you chose this. And your mother died knowing what you'd chosen, so now you're going to have to live with both of those things. They walked him out to the front door. Christine didn't look at me on her way out. That was fine. I didn't need her to. I stood in my kitchen and listened to the vehicles pull away, and then I listened to the silence. Same silence I'd been living in for 11 months. But it felt different now. Cleaner somehow. Like a window that had been wiped. Agent Hollis came back inside after a few minutes. She stood in the kitchen doorway. "Your wife wanted you to know something," she said. "She told me, the last time I saw her, that she was sorry for keeping it from you. But she said you would have protected her instead of protecting yourself. She said that was the one thing she couldn't let you do." I sat down at the kitchen table. "She sounds like she knew you very well." "Better than I knew myself," I said. Hollis nodded once. "The full network, 14 properties, 11 families, they'll all be notified this week. The lending group's principals are being taken into custody in Nashville this morning. Your property is clean. The quiet title action has been formally nullified. This land is yours." She left me with her card and a copy of the case reference number, and a particular quiet of a house that has just had its worst secret removed from it. 4 months later, spring came back to Harlan County the way it always does. Too slowly, and then all at once. I was standing in the garden one morning, the one Eleanor had kept for 30 years, deciding what to put in it this season. Her redbud tree was in full bloom along the back fence. Pink flowers, the color she'd always said looked like an apology from winter. The trial had moved quickly. Daniel accepted a plea. 8 years, federal prison, with mandatory restitution to the families affected by the Horizon scheme. Christine cooperated with prosecutors and received a reduced sentence, 4 years. The principals of the Nashville lending group were facing trial separately. 14 families had been formally notified that their properties were protected. My attorney in Lexington, a quiet woman named Barbara who had known Eleanor through the church, had located a second letter. Eleanor had given it to Barbara 2 weeks before she died, to be delivered once the legal proceedings had concluded. I'd read it the night before, alone at the kitchen table with my coffee. "My love, if Barbara is giving you this, then it worked. Everything I built, everything I buried, it worked, and you are safe, and the land is safe, and I can stop worrying." I know that sounds like me. You're probably smiling. I need you to know that keeping this from you was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew if I told you, you would have stood between me and all of it, and then none of it would have been built properly. You would have protected me instead. That's who you are. It's one of the reasons I chose you. Don't carry this. Don't carry Daniel's choices, or my secrets, or the weight of what this year cost us. You did your part. You found the envelope. You trusted the right people. You sat at that table and you held yourself together, and you let justice happen the way it was supposed to. I am so proud of you. Plant the garden this year, all of it. Plant it for both of us, always yours. Eleanor, I folded the letter carefully and put it in my shirt pocket, close to where it needed to be. Standing in the garden now, looking out across the 22 acres that 3 generations of my family had worked, I thought about what it costs to love someone well. What it requires. Eleanor had given the last year of her life, the last of her strength, the last of her clarity, to protecting something she'd spent 43 years helping me build. She had done it without asking for anything in return, without even asking me to know. That is a kind of love that does not have a proper name. I picked up my spade and started turning the first row. The redbud was in full bloom. The sky above Kentucky was the particular blue it only gets in April. Somewhere down the fence line, a mockingbird was going through its entire repertoire. Cardinal, wren, blue jay, something I didn't recognize. Cycling through every voice it had learned, as if it wanted to fill the morning completely. I let it. There is a particular kind of strength you find on the other side of loss. Not the strength you had before. That's gone. And you won't get it back. And it's right that you don't. The new kind is quieter. It knows what it cost. It doesn't pretend it didn't. Eleanor knew that. She built her whole last year out of it. I am 68 years old. I have buried my wife and watched my son led away in handcuffs, and I have stood in the garden she planted, and I have kept going. That is what she asked me to do. That is what I intend to do. If this story reached you today, if something in it felt familiar or gave you something to hold on to, I'm glad it found you. Leave me a comment. Tell me where you are, what time it is, what brought you here today. I read everyone, and if there's someone in your life who has been protecting you quietly, without asking you to know. Tell them. Don't wait until there's an envelope in a diner, and a woman in a gray coat, and 11 months of silence between you and the truth. Tell them now while you still can. God bless you. I'll see you in the next one.